All right, so now we will start creating an app like the pros. So we will use Node.js and the CLI to create a project, to run a development server and everything else. So first, you need to have Node installed in your computer. If you don't, go to the previous videos and install Node.js. I've added a couple of videos where I show you how to install Node.js on Mac and Windows. So we will use the Vue CLI. So why using a CLI? So with real projects at the end, they will go to a server, the www.something.com. So this www works on a real server, right? So with the CLI, we can create a template that runs a development server. It's kind of a simulation of a server. So it's basically a way we can emulate a real environment so we can work in our computer. It's not a real server. It's a fake, but it follows the same rules. And of course, we can do a lot more things than that. So when we write our code to create the application, at the end, the CLI, this template actually, will compile most of our files, and it will process the code and convert the code to something that any browser can understand. And this is where Webpack or Browserify comes into play. So the structure of the project now it's going to get much more complex, but it's a little bit more professional, much more professional. And at the end, this template that we will be modifying will convert our code, and it will show on the browser using this development server. So again, it's just, more than a server. Don't worry. Maybe if you come from technologies like React or Angular, this is something that's very common, very common workflow. Now, if you don't know this workflow, don't worry at all. We're going to learn the whole process right here. Okay, so to start using the CLI, first we need to install it. Now, if I go right here and say CLI, then view and npm, is going to take us to the place where we can get information about this. And right here you get the documentation of how to install it, what it is, and everything else. Now, with the CLI, we can create different types of projects. Right here you have efficient templates, because this is just what it is. It's a template. We download everything with the CLI, this template, and then we can work. So with the Vue, it's a little bit different than others. Maybe with React, you have different types of projects, right? Different types of templates. You have a Webpack, which is a full Webpack with Vue loader and everything else. You get a lot of features with this one. Then you have kind of a simple template with Webpack. It's pretty much the same thing as this, but much more smaller. And then you have Browserify, which is something else. Very similar to Webpack, but it's a different thing. And then pay a PWA, and you can create the simplest setup. On this course, we're going to be using Webpack Simple. We are not going to use the other one, right? But before we can do this, we need to install the CLI. How can we do it? Okay. So first, you need to go to the terminal. Doesn't matter if you're on a project, maybe you're in a directory. I'm already inside the directory I want, but we're going to make a reference to this later. If you're inside of documents or whatever, it doesn't matter. Now, one more thing before we move forward. Maybe you don't have a Mac. You're using maybe a Windows computer. And, using the command prompt from Windows, it's a real pain in the where. So if you have the VS Code opened and you navigate maybe to a directory, you create a directory, and then you go inside with some empty space right here, no files. You can go to View and then to integrate a terminal or maybe terminal, and it will open a simulation. Actually, it's not a simulation; it's the real terminal of Windows, but everything is going to be right here on the actual VS Code. So you can run commands and install things from here, right? So there's no need to open the command prompt right now. So if you want, you can do it from here. I'm going to do it from here because the command prompt from Mac, it's really, really good. Really good. So, okay, so how can we install it? Now, if you have npm or maybe a different one, I have yarn installed in my computer. So I'm going to use yarn. Now, if you don't know what npm or yarn is, it's because you need to use npm. Whenever we installed Node.js, npm, which is Node Package Manager, comes with Node. So it's already installed in your computer. And we use npm to install dependencies in our computer, to install things. So if you have npm, just do npm install, just like this. Then -g, we can install the CLI globally, right? So whenever we run this CLI, we're going to use it. There's no need to install it every time we want to use it. Whenever we install things globally, then we can use it whenever we want or whenever we want. So it's -g, don't forget the -g, at, and we're going to use view / and then CLI, all right? So again, if you're using npm, you're not using yarn or anything else, type this in your computer, in your command, and press enter. I'm using yarn, so if you have yarn, of course, is yarn global space add, and then add view / CLI. Gonna press enter. Okay, so everything got installed. We have the CLI in our computer. So I'm gonna do clear to remove that. And now what we need to do, we need to install or to create a template or create a project. So you need to navigate to the directory. Mine, it's called inter for intermediate. So you will need to navigate to that directory because we need to install it there. And if you're on on Windows, maybe if you're using the terminal, you're already in that directory. So there's no need for you to, go to that place doing cd ... cd documents and whatever. You don't need to do that. So, okay. So I'm going to go right here, and first we're going to install the template. So first we need to say view, and then we do init. Now remember, we just installed the view CLI. So now we make a reference to view, our computer knows that we are talking about the CLI. So when we say init, it means that we want to start a new template. We are going to be using the webpack and then simple, just like this. Don't press enter, all right? Do not press enter. Now, the next thing is going to be creating a directory. Now, if you're, for example, in documents and you want to create a new project, you can say, name of my project, just something like this. And the CLI will create a directory inside documents and it will install all the files there. I'm already inside that directory, so I don't need, a new directory inside the directory of inter. What I want to do, I want to install all the files inside of this directory. So if this is the case, I'm going to do just dot, and it will install everything inside of here. So I'm going to press enter. It's going to go, and it's going to take maybe a couple minutes, maybe less. It's not a lot of files. So generate a project in current directory. Yes, we do want to do that. We want to do that. So it's going to download a template, project name. In this case, if you do not provide any kind of information, it's going to be by default the name of the directory. So this is what I want. Description, BJS project, the author, MIT, whatever, use SAS. No, not really. I don't want to use SAS. So, okay. So everything is installed. Now in the left, if you check it out right here, I'm going to do clear right here. So in the left, we see a lot of files, Babel, RC, gitignore, and everything else. I'm going to give you a brief description of these files in a couple minutes. Now, the most important file, one of the most important files, is going to be the package.json. So this is kind of the index, the manifest of our whole application, at least this whole template. You get a description, version, and everything else. Now, right here at the bottom, you have dependencies and you have dev dependencies. So all of this, modules are the ones we're going to be using when we create the development server and everything else. So by default, when we install the template, they are not installed. They are listed as, required, that we need these files. So now what we need to do, we need to tell our application to install all of these dependencies so we can use them. So the next step is going to be installing. Now, if you have yarn, you can do yarn. Oh, sorry, let's go with npm. If you have npm, you need to do npm and then install, just like this. And if you press enter, it's going to go, npm is going to go to your package.json of this directory, of course. And it will take a look at the dependencies and it's going to say, oh, okay, I need to install the Babel core and everything else. Now, again, if you have yarn, same thing, but it's yarn install. All right, I'm going to do that because I have yarn. This is going to take maybe a couple minutes, depends on your connection. So I'm going to pause the video and be right back. Okay, so after everything is installed, it's gonna go back to the batch. So I'm gonna do clear. And now if you notice, we have a new directory inside of our project. We have Node modules with a lot of directories. So all of these directories, these files we have right here are the ones the application is going to use to, create a development server and, do its job. All right. So now we have everything installed. So the next step is going to be running a development server and running a project. By default, when we install a template, that they have some, some code right here so we can actually see something on the screen. For example, right here, we're going to see this in the browser. But don't worry, we're gonna see it right now. So how can we run this? Well, everything is listed on the package.json. If you go to scripts, you have two commands right here, the dev and the build. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So always, and this is just Node, it's not Vue.js. On the scripts, you have listed the ways you can start your application. You have a build, which is going to be when it's go to production, you need to run this command. But if you're working on your computer, you're actually developing your project, you need to run the dep command. So how can we run it? Really simple. If you have npm, you need to do npm run and then dep, just like this. And if you press enter, it's going to do a couple of things, of course. Since I have yarn, I'm going to say yarn run dep. I'm going to press enter. It's going to start doing a few things. Okay, and after it's done, it's going to say project running at and localhost 8080, right? So whenever we do this, the yarn run, yarn is going to start, actually it's Webpack, is going to start a development server so we can work with, right? It's like a fake server. And the server, it's running on localhost 8080. So this is going to be equal to your www.mywebpage.com. So this is pretty much the same thing. So after you run this, maybe you didn't notice, it's going to open a new tab on your browser with this location. So inside of here, you have this code, which is equal to the code we have right here inside source. This is pretty much it. And if you notice, this is just a HTML, right? Of course, with the Vue layout. And we're going to learn all of this in a few minutes. So, okay, so everything's works. You install the CLI, you install the dependencies, and you're now running the template, right? Okay, so I want to show you a little bit more about the structure we have right here. Okay, so let me give you a tiny overview of all the files right here. Just, so you can know at least what they are. Okay, so let's start right from the beginning. When we install the template, we get a source. So inside the source, we will put all the files we are going to be creating to create our application, right? It's like adding HTMLs. But in this case, we're going to be adding files with the extension of .vue. This is how Vue works. This is kind of a template in theory. So all the files with the Vue logic are going to go right here. Now then we have the main.js, and notice that this one is a JavaScript file. It's not a Vue one. And this one is the one that starts everything. It's the first file that Vue.js is going to run. It's importing Vue and it's importing app. And notice that app, it's .vue. It's bringing this .vue file and it's saying, okay, so the app, it's the one that, the first file that's going to be showing up. So we need to render app. So again, this main.js is going to start all the Vue logic. And then inside of here, we, add all the components and templates. And you remember I've told you before we were going to use templates and components. Well, this app is just a component with the .vue extension. It's extension. It's just a component. All right, what else? Right here we have assets. And for example, we have a logo. This is where we're going to be putting all the images and the static files. Then what else? We have the Babel RC. And this one, it's not really related to Vue.js. This one comes from Webpack. So to create a development server, to make this work, we use Webpack, which is this Webpack config. And Webpack is going to compile all the files, everything we have on source and everything else, and it's going to run this development server, and this is why we are getting this localhost 880. So Webpack works with something called Babel. Now Babel sometimes needs some instructions, right? Most of the times it needs just a basic instruction just like this. Sometimes we need to do something else, maybe run very specific code. So we will need to add rules right here. But this is all all it is. It's just a file where we can add rules to babel.rc. But don't worry, we're not gonna touch this one a lot. Then we have the index.html, and if you remember, we are working with a single page application. So we just need one HTML, and this is the one. Then we have the gitignore, and this gitignore, it's something related to Git. When you upload this file to a cloud storage service, in this case Git, this is where we can tell the application what to ignore. In this case, node modules. We're maybe gonna talk about this gitignore much later. What else? We have the package.json. We already mentioned this. This is the manifest of our application with all the dependencies. Whenever we install new dependencies, and we will, it's gonna show up on dependencies or on dev dependency. Depends on, of course, what we are using. So right now, on the next lectures, you're just gonna focus on maybe on the HTML and on the SRC. Everything, it's gonna go on the SRC. All right, so we are now ready to move forward. So let's go to the next one.